bowling ball going back and forth in a line from you to me.
Let's have a look.
And going from that, I want to first turn to page 89. I want to show the viewers this iconic photo. Okay, everybody has seen this on the cover of Geographic magazine.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, before I read the paragraph, I want people to look at this photo. Okay, everybody's familiar with it. Marcus, am I holding it up correctly?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
AS11 405903. Very famous
Yeah.
photograph. Man on the moon.
Man on the moon. That is, of course, Buzz Aldrin,
Yep.
allegedly, Buzz Aldrin. And I want the viewer to take a really good look at this photo while I read the paragraph. So imprint that in your mind, and we'll go back to it. All right.
Okay.
I want to start on that photo. Chapter 12, Buzz Metamorphism, page 87, the very first paragraph.
Okay.
Perhaps the most iconic image of the Apollo moon landings is this one of Buzz Aldrin from the Apollo 11 mission taken by Neil Armstrong. It is also one of the most discussed, debated, and contested Apollo photographs, as we shall discover. Now let's read to page 88. And this is where it gets very interesting. And we've gone back and forth with the Apollo proponents over this several times. And we go down to the third paragraph, page 88, and I'll read it out loud here. The original photograph clearly shows significant evidence of fall off. And Marcus, you're going to explain that in a second here. The quote, fall off has been widely, that's fall off. If I'm not pronouncing, just to clarify, I'm actually saying fall off. That the fall off has been widely commented on by the moon landing deniers. So it would appear that somebody has replaced the original photograph in the Apollo records with one manipulated to remove the telltale fall off and show an evenly illuminated lunar surface. Now, Marcus, when you're talking about this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold a photo up for a couple of minutes to the camera, because that's kind of important. This is a very, I really understand this one very well, but I'd like you to explain what you mean by fall off, and as it relates to this picture of Buzz Aldrin supposedly on the moon. Am I holding it right?
Yeah, that's fine. You can see that. It's all clear.
Yeah.
That's the replaced photograph. That is not the original. And the way you can tell that is the top of his helmet. In that photograph, the replaced photograph, replaced in about 2004, the top of his helmet is grey. The shadow on the helmet is grey. It's not black. Now, fall off is what's referred to as the intensity of the light in the photograph. In that photograph, it looks as if there is no fall off or little fall off, because you see the light all the way to the horizon, which would be about 2 miles away, is more or less the same level of intensity. Now, if you go to the next, or to the first page, page 87, you'll see the original photograph, which has the fall off in it. The fall off is the lack of intensity of the light. And look at the top of the helmet. It's almost black, which is what it should be. But around his feet, he appears to be standing in a pool of light. The light, whether it's a spotlight or a sun or whatever is illuminating him, is coming over his left shoulder. You can see the intensity of the illumination in his helmet and on his arm. But you can also see all the detail in the shadow of his spacesuit. You can read his name on it. It's a bit on the left. It says E. Aldrin. And in the visor, you see reflected part of the lunar lander on the right, and the person taking the photograph, presumably Neil Armstrong, in the center. So you see what you expect to see until you start examining the photograph. Now, if you look at page 90, you have those two photographs side by side. You have the two photographs side by side. The first one we were looking at is on the right, and you can see that the illumination of the surface is much more intense around where he is standing compared to the 2 mile distant horizon. So the fall off of light is the lack of intensity. The photograph on the left is the altered photograph, where the top of his helmet is much lighter in color and the illumination of the surface appears to be much more evenly spread. That's what you'd expect to see, but because you've seen the original photograph, the one on the right, it is completely different. Whoever has changed it has lightened the intensity of light on the surface. So it appears that he is standing not in a pool of light, but just on a regular surface. But again, the front of his spacesuit is well illuminated. You can actually see shadows. I would suggest that that is the result of a big reflector, which is not visible in the picture, obviously, because that would give the game away. But why is there so much detail visible on the front of his spacesuit? It should be black shadow. You can see the black shadow that he's casting from his legs. There's no detail in the surface of whatever they're using, probably Portland cement mixed up with a bit of gravel. So you've got so many problems with that photograph. And anyway, the original cut off just above his helmet. So somebody has changed the photograph by adding a bit of black sky above him to make the photograph more balanced in terms of, in fact, on the same page in the New York Times image, you can see where the original.
There's a better photograph.
That's right. Yeah. So that's been. You can see where that's the framing of the original photograph. It cuts off above his helmet, which wasn't in the original. And you can see the difference between those two. The left-hand picture is the original, and the brightened image is the right-hand picture. It's the same image, but different pictures. Why did they need to brighten it? Why was that necessary? Was it because David Percy was pointing out the fall off? How the light was more intense close to the camera?
So just to be clear, the photo on the left is the original.
Yeah.
And the photo on the right is the updated version.
That's right. Yeah.
So if I use the analogy of Shining, when it talks about fall off, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I use the analogy in a dark room, and I have a tennis ball in my left hand, and I have a powerful light source in my right hand.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, light source in my right hand here.
Yeah.
Right? So that light will be hitting the tennis ball, but because the tennis ball is so small and the light is like a big spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have fall off from the light, but not on the ball. The ball would be uniform.
Yeah.
If the light, okay, so it diminishes the what is it? I forget it now. The square of the distance, right?
Yeah.
So it weakens. So the light weakens, but that weakened part, even though it weakens here, if you have the light source over here and the tennis ball here, and it'll weaken here, the further out it is from the sun, continues on to the ball. Yes, the light will be less intense when it hits the ball, but the light that hits the ball would be uniform.
Yes, it would. It would. You're
Square
quite right.
The distance.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that image you've got there, the right-hand side of your face is much brighter than the left-hand side because of the intensity of the light, and there's no reflecting back of the light to make
Exactly.
your left-hand side as bright. It's not as bright.
Exactly. So, but the light that hits my face on that side is not falling off on my face. It's still, even though that light, it's only a couple of feet away, but it's already, by the time it hits my face, the brightness has diminished.
Yeah,
But the diminished part of that light still covers my face in a uniform way, and that's exactly what would happen with the moon. You would have the moon, the light from the sun hitting, even though the light is greatly diminished by the time it hits the sun. I mean, it's still bright, but it's not as bright as when it left the moon, or sorry, the sun. So you have the light from the sun, even though it's diminished by the time it gets to the moon, it hits the moon at a uniform pattern. There is no fall off on the moon itself.
No fall off.
Is that what correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The sunlight hitting the moon would illuminate every piece of the moon that it hits with the same intensity.
Exactly as it shows right here in your photo, page 94. That's exactly what you should have seen, is the one on the left. The original one should have been the one on the right. Sorry, the one on the right is the correct one.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. And that's a point that many people have trouble comprehending, but it is a fact. Like if you shine a light, a flashlight on the ground, you can see how the light diminishes.
Yeah, of course.
All right, it diminishes. But if you shine that same flashlight on a tennis ball up close, that light doesn't diminish. That's the same analogy of the sun shining light on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's basically it's the inverse square law.
The inverse square law. That's what I was getting at. Yeah, I've been 40 years out of school, so the inverse square law. But I do know that it diminishes with the square of the distance.
That's right.
Gravity and light, doesn't matter what it is. Right. Okay. All right. No, that's good. I wanted to really clarify that point for the reader. And is there anything now in this chapter? You do go through a lot of quotes, and I'm not going to read them all here, but you do put a lot of quotes in here that that either for or against what you're talking about. It's a very interesting read. But the bottom line is that any physicist will tell you the same thing. Light hitting the moon does not fall off while it's on the moon. It's diminished light from the sun, but it doesn't fall off, and that's the fundamental point that that you're making. And I'll just finish off this chapter with this quote, because it actually kind of emphasizes the point here. So let me just finish off page 97, Marcus.
Okay. Yeah.
At the bottom, where it says the light source, and I'll show that photograph when we're done here.
Okay.
Okay. The light source in this next photograph cannot be the sun, as the center of the light source is just above the top right and not 83 million miles away. Buzz Aldrin did say he sneaked a torch into his pack. This is interesting. Is this true? He he took a torch with him. Is he being honest with this? Okay, because I wanna talk about that too. He sneaked a torch into his pack, so maybe he was just having some fun off camera. Search the Apollo imagery library, and you will find many photographs from other Apollo missions that show a diverging shaft of light from an artificial light source. No matter what the pro-NASA boys and girls would like you to believe, the evidence clearly shows that the Apollo photographs were not taken on the moon, but in some studio here on planet Earth. And the photo I'm going to show the viewers is from Apollo 11, number 405935. And this is the one you're talking about. This is a light source. This is not, and this is on the moon. This is not from the sun.
No, there we go. It's the same way that a light source used on Earth will have a sort of cone shape to it, where it comes out of whatever, whether it's a torch or a light, It was spread out, and that's what appears to be happening there. The light is spreading from its source. That shouldn't happen. If that is supposed to be the sun, there's no way that would happen. It should be parallel. So that was certainly taken from some sort of artificial light source. As I say, they were taken here on Earth under controlled studio conditions. Trouble is, they didn't control them very well, and they gave the game away. There we go. Yep. You got a problem there, haven't you? Because that's supposed to be the sun top right. But if that was the sun being photographed from the lunar surface, it'd be much smaller for a start, and it would have rays coming off it, not the sort of spread of light we see on the left-hand side of the picture. And if that's Apollo 11, what the hell's that mountain doing in the background? That's Apollo 15. That's not Apollo 11. So either NASA have got their numbering wrong, or they put that out as a sort of explanation for what they're looking at. It's nonsense. The whole thing is absolute rubbish. It's a brilliant...
Yeah, I think it's obvious too, even to the untrained eye, when it comes to photographic, myself and the untrained eye, it's kind of like, Marcus, when we talked about, and we've talked about this many times, that I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't want to get into the next chapter. We did really good today. We've covered chapter 9, 10, 11, and 12. We covered 4 chapters, Marcus.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's good. We'll save the next chapter with chapter 13 for the next video. But I would like to just to wrap it up, just to talk a little bit more about what was I going to say? There was when we get into okay, so one of the positions that the pro NASA critics will say is that, okay, well, maybe some of the photographs are fake. Yeah. So basically what we're doing is we're chipping away at their shields. Their shields are diminishing. That's what we're really, in essence, what we're doing, right? And when it gets into, when you have people that'll come back and say, you know, Bart Sabrile said it too about the video he shows where he got that, accidentally got that video where it shows them faking the moon 130,000 miles out, faking the Earth rather, from 130 miles out, and you see them, you know, staging the whole setup, and when they're not, they're supposedly in Earth orbit. I don't know if they were in Earth orbit. I suspect they weren't. But to go with Marcus with Bart on this, he still brings up a very valid point. They're trying to fake the fact that they're 130,000 miles away from Earth. Yeah. And you see how they fake it. And even he says, Marcus has said correctly, Bart has said correctly that the critics actually agree. He's right. They did fake it. But even with all this evidence that coming out that they faked it, at some point, the critics are going to have to admit that, well, there's so much fakery going on here, it has to be fake, right? Yeah. They're even admitting it. You have the proponents admitting that, yeah, some of the photographs are fake. Yeah, there's a problem with some of the films. Yeah, but even if Armstrong admitted that he didn't go to the moon, well, we still believe it anyway. You know, that's kind of the mentality we're dealing with. Yeah. And that's a disturbing mentality. And that's why, for the most part, I don't get into debates anymore with Apollo proponents, for the simple reasons that they will actually acknowledge that, yeah, you're right, but, yeah, you're right, but, right? Yeah, but, right? There is one Apollo proponent that I do have a debate with, and that's Justin Cox. I don't mind talking to him. He would like to do another debate, actually, and so I'm thinking about it. And it's not even a debate in so much as it's a discussion, right? Yeah. And I know you have an upcoming debate. That's not what this is. I much prefer a looser format, and I get that with Justin Cox. You're coming up now with a debate, which is going to be. I don't want to actually let the viewers know that it's coming up. Marcus is going to be debating on the Modern Day Debate. Is that correct?
Modern
Channel?
Day Debate. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you've been on there a couple of times already, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Debating the Apollo moon landings.
Yes. And it
And-
should be very interesting. When is that going to happen?
That's Saturday, the 1st of February. 1st of February. Yeah, Saturday, the 1st of February.
Okay.
About 2 o'clock Eastern.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that, I'm going to be posting this video in about 3 or 4 parts, so they probably won't get that information. So what I'll do in the comment, in the description of the first part 1 here, I will put your upcoming debate in with the Modern Day Debate channel. Because by the time I post this segment of the video, because it's the last segment, you would already have done the debate. But since we're talking about that, I am going to make a prediction. I'm going to leave this in, and I'm going to predict that, Marcus, you're going to clean this clock like you did the last time. I have absolute confidence that you will handle yourself well, which you've done before on that channel, and you will handle yourself well again in this next debate. So I already know we're going to talk in past tense. I already know you've done well.
Oh, thank you. That's nice.
Yeah.
Nice to hear, because it's hard to decide how it comes across when I'm doing the talking.
Yeah. Well, if it's any example, the first couple of debates you've done, you really held yourself well in terms of the information that you were giving. Plus, while he was losing his temper, which he did a few times, you remained very calm and collect, and you stayed on point, and that was the whole point of the debate. The problem is with people like him, and I've had a couple of back and forth with him in the comments section. He's very close-minded. That's not, I'm talking about the other guy, not the guy you're debating on February 1st. I know you're debating somebody different, but they still have the same approach, is that they like to insert their emotions, and then when that doesn't work, their insults. And when that doesn't work, then they lose their temper. And that seems to be all 3 steps. So you look for that. First is the emotion, then it's the insults, and then it's they lose their temper. So look for those 3 things when you're watching any future debates with Marcus on Modern Day Debate, MDD for short. But that's what I've noticed. Their MC Toon was the last one you debated.
Yeah, MC Toon. Yeah. And I've got my own Rubik's Cube now.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Every time you would bring up a valid point, because I remember I actually watched that one live when you were doing. Yes, I watched it live, and I was up like, wow, I was like 2:30. I don't know, it was like you were up late. I was up till 2:30 in the morning. It was like what, 8 o'clock for you? 8 a.m.
It finished. Let me just think. Yeah, it started late. I think it finished at 2 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. And every time you brought up a valid point, well, all your points are valid, but some stand out more than others, right? As is normal. He pulled out the Rubik's Cube and he would start playing with that. He's trying to give the impression that he was saying, yeah, he's heard this before. When in actuality, he had no comeback. So he pulled out the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's when I started calling him out because he'd recommended a debating book, a book on how a debate should be conducted.
Yeah.
Which is one person starts, then the other person responds to that, and then you respond to what's just been said. And it's fairly standard. And there are various rules that are in the book on debating, is that you should not use emotion. Emotion is not part of it. I mean, you can be enthusiastic about something. You can emphasize what you're saying, and you can produce the evidence behind it. But what I did notice is that every time I made a comment or a statement, you'd say, well, where's your evidence for that? And I say, well, in fact, anything that I referred to, and I have in the book, The Apollo Moon Hoax, The Real Evidence, I say, well, there's 246 references in that book. They're on a website. You better go and look at it. And I mentioned the famous film, Make Believe, Smoke and Mirrors, as how it was done, and he hadn't heard of it, let alone watched it.
Yeah.
So, these people, they take what NASA says and they believe it. And anybody who challenges that belief must be a conspiracy theorist or completely mad or off his rocker. So if that's the way they approach it, you're not going to get very far. I can make the statements I make and the comments I make, and I can call for evidence, if he makes a comment. And in fact, it was interesting. One of the things that McToon did was the hammer and feather drop on Apollo 15. How can you fake that? Feathers don't fall. If you do it on Earth, the feather will fall much slower than the hammer.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true, actually, because David Percy recreated that in his film What Happened on the Moon. Yeah. He did it in a studio. Yeah, the feather and the hammer dropped at the same time. You put a lead weight in the feather. It's not rocket science.
No. Exactly. I mean, it's a magician's trick.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, that's
right?
why the film is called Make Believe, Smoke and Mirrors.
Sleight of hand.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors. That's how magicians work. Like David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. Smoke and mirrors. The whole thing revolved.
Unbelievable. That is, it's just like, it's all sleight of hand. Magicians have honed their craft, and you know what? That really is a good way to end this video series. Stay on after we finish recording so we could chat for a bit.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that what we're talking about when it comes to NASA is experts that are basically magicians.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about NASA and the contribution it's made to the aviation industry and weather. I'm not talking about that. And they've done some good work with their unmanned missions. I'm not talking about that either. I'm just specifically talking about their manned space missions. It's a magician's trick. That's what it is. And that, I think, is a very good way to end this. Marcus, I just want to thank you for this. This is probably going to be part 3 or 4, depending on how I edit this. Okay. But I'm going to be posting these videos, of course, in half-hour segments. Yeah. And this will probably be part 4. But I really appreciate your chat. The chat we had today was actually quite fun. We got a lot of ground covered, and I am looking forward to our next interview.
There's some more to do in the book. There's a few more chapters to go.
Oh, we're on chapter 13 next, and we have several more chapters to go. I think there's 19, is there, if I'm not mistaken?
29.
29. Okay, I got the 9 part right.
Yeah, you got that. Yeah. No, it's there's a lot. Film in space, that's one of them. We'll do that at some point.
Yeah. 2
gravities. Oh, that's fun. How many photographs? Oh, no. Okay.
There is actually a lot of information. The one I'm really interested in too, when we get to it, and that's chapter 24, simulation. That is that's a really good one. I look forward to getting to that, but we're going to work our way there. I want to cover all the other ground, but definitely there is a lot of ground to cover in this book. And this book, for the reader, it's 200 pages, but it is packed full of information. And I will say that both Marcus Allen and Trevor Weaver have done the heavy lifting for you. Okay. Yeah. They have, it's 200 pages. It's a good read. And the reading flows very nicely, but it is packed full of information. I highly recommend it. So
thank you.
Please,
buy it.
Go to Amazon and buy that book. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
And contact me at nexusmagazine.com, and I'll give you a signed copy.
There you go. There you go, folks. There's an incentive. If there isn't one, there's one there. Marcus, again, thank you for today. It was a great chat. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. I look forward to that as well.
Thank you, Marcus. And to the viewers out there, I really appreciate your comments please leave comments. I do read all of them, or most of them anyway. And the algorithm slows down my channel a lot, so it would help if those of you who are watching who are new, if you could please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It will help the channel get out to some more viewers, so I'd really appreciate that. And in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed, or you're enjoying this video series. And if you're a little confused, by the way, as to how I'm doing this, go back to the very first video, read in the description, part 1, that'll be part 1 of the series. And I actually describe what we're doing here and how I'm posting it. So there shouldn't be any confusion. And then when you're actually listening to the videos, I have it in parts 1, A, B, and C. So that's part 1, part 2, etc. And then I go to part 2A, part 2B, etc. And so on, and part 3 and part 4, and you'll know the chapters that we're discussing here. So when you follow along, if you start from the stop, you're new to this, go back to part 1 and start from there, and you will have no problem following what we're talking about and what chapters we're talking about in the book. So again, once again, I just want to thank everybody. I really appreciate your feedback in the comments below, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Bye for now.
Your love's just like a wrecking ball going back and forth in a line